In this video I'm going to be giving you the shocking details of the Tide bounce back loan scandal, which has many twists and turns, including dodgy debt collectors, death threats to an MP, and a huge trail of vulnerable and ripped off business owners. But more shockingly of all, the government are refusing to step in and stop it. Over on my website mrbounceback.com you'll find a copy of the BBL Lenders Handbook, which clearly states all of the rules of the bounce back loan scheme. Here is a very important section of the handbook highlighted on the screen, and it clearly states the following. The lender must not require the borrower to pay any lender levied fees of any description, including on default, or any default interest, except that the lender may continue to charge interest at 2.5% per annum if the scheme facility is not repaid when due, until such a time as it is repaid. And here, via remote link, is Baroness Bowles of Berkhamsted telling us the exact same thing.
The Minister also said in reply to me at committee that lenders must not require borrowers to pay any lender-levied fees of any description, including on default, or any default interest.
And here is Baroness Penn for the government, explaining to Baroness Bowles and us and everybody watching the exact same thing.
And finally, lenders must not require the borrowers to pay any lender-levied fees of any description, including on default or any default interest.
So as you can see, everybody is singing from the same hymn book. And I'm pleased to announce that all the bounce back loan lenders, the big ones, the small ones, they're all following them rules. No extra fees or charges or any of that nonsense. If you're in arrears, you want to set up a repayment plan, or unfortunately you've had to default. Well, all of them except for Tide. So you can imagine my shock and horror when people were phoning me up and letting me know that they were being hit with fees and charges by debt collectors acting on behalf of Tide. Let's move on to Ward Hadaway. Okay, as you can see on the screen, there is a letter they sent out to somebody who was in arrears, and they have added an extra 10% onto the amount owed, so they want an extra £2,098.81 in legal costs. Now, what pissed me off completely about this one is that person is vulnerable for a start. However, they've told them they've got to pay by 4 p.m. on Christmas Day of last year, 25th of December 2023, by 4 p.m. So they're not only picking on highly vulnerable people, hitting them with illegal charges, because you're not allowed to add any fees, commission charges, whatever they want to call it, onto a BBL. So they want an extra £2,000. The robbing bastards. And that's on Christmas Day. Imagine being vulnerable, your business is suffering, and these scam artists, Ward Hadaway, sue me if you want for calling you scam artists, because that's what you are, and I've got the proof sat there. In fact, there's even more. Let's take a look at another one. Okay, here's another one from Ward Hadaway. Now, this person had until the 12th of December last year at 4 p.m. to pay what they owed. Now, what they did here was they added an extra £3,331.72. And they're claiming those legal costs pursuant to the terms of the facility. They are the terms which clearly say no fees and charges, even in default, blah blah blah. And what they they want it paying into the client account, which is at Barclays Bank. Well done, Barclays, for facilitating these scam artists. So there we are. Now this person, I've spoken to this person a lot, and they are so vulnerable you wouldn't believe it, and it really gets up the crack of my arse what Tide are doing with the aid of this bunch of charlatans, Ward Hadaway. It makes you sick. That's an extra £3,331.72 pursuant to the terms. Well, does that? And then what they also do here, if you do not pay blah blah blah, county court proceedings to recover this sum will be issued without further reference to you. Well, I'd love to see what the judge makes of that when he sees the terms of the facility. To give you some idea about how much Tide or the scam artist debt collectors could be bagging off this scam, if you look at the screen now, the top figure there is 24.63, that's 24.63 million Tide have had back via the government guarantee. And the bottom figure equates to the number of BBLs that they've claimed on the guarantee, so that's 817. Now, looking at the amount these fees and charges they keep slapping on bounce back loans, that could be about 2.463 million. Because the fees tend to be around the 10% mark, so that's 2.4 million they've had in their handbags that they're not allowed to claim of vulnerable people. But it gets worse. Tide have got so many defaulted bounce back loans and arrears, etc., etc. They use another firm called Lupton Fawcett. And as you can see on the screen, this chap had to pay an extra £583.23 in those elusive, illegal, immoral fees and charges. So I thought I'd do a little research like you do on these debt collection firms. They're all solicitors firms. So I had a quick look at Companies House for Lupton Fawcett. And oh look, Andrew Lindsay. I thought to myself, he's now resigned, but I thought, Andrew Lindsay, that name rings a bell. Well, listen to this.
Again last week, a senior corporate lawyer, Andrew Lindsay, posted on his LinkedIn account that if it turns out that the inquiry concludes there is nothing to be seen here, and in the meantime some investment and jobs are lost, local Labour MP Andy MacDonald should be dragged through the streets of Teesside and lynched. This has deeply upset and alarmed my family and me. I've reported this matter appropriately, Mr. Speaker, but given the murders in recent years of Joe Cox, Sir David Amis, and Nigel Jones's personal aide, Andrew Pennington, and not forgetting the stabbing of our Right Honourable friend, the member for Newham North East, I seek your guidance as to what can be done to ensure that the legitimate debate on such matters of significance to our constituents does not spill over in such a manner that makes the appalling comments of the likes of Mr. Lindsay increasing more likely, and what more this House can do to protect and support members on the receiving end of such abuse and reduce the likelihood of these dreadful outbursts, be they on social media or otherwise.
Thank you for giving notice of the point of order. As he says, people are entitled to make their views known inside and outside this House, but threats to members are very real, and those who comment should consider the potential effects of their words before posting injudiciously rather than afterwards. And what I will come to is say, I take it very, very seriously. When you text me on Friday, I also spoke to the people as well about security issues. I won't go into that part of it, but let them rest assured, we will defend the members of both sides of this House, and nobody should be threatened in carrying out their duties. And certainly, we will not forget those who were murdered carrying out their duties.
So who are supposed to oversee bounce back loan lenders to make sure they're not pulling these sort of scams, employing raving lunatics who are giving out death threats and hounding borrowers for fees and charges? Who is responsible? Well, I'll tell you. Take a look at the screen. There you go. KPMG paid, well, it's now a tad over £10 million. And what did they do for that 10 million? Well, they were supposed to provide consistent, confidential, reliable and independent oversight of the lenders participating in the BBL scheme, along with the other schemes. Well done KPMG, you've completely failed us there. We'd like that 10 million back, please. But there's more. There were 2 contracts given out, and the other one was to RSM, who must be even worse than KPMG because they only got 6.4 million for the same type of thing. So there we go, what's that? Over £16 million. For what? What a scam. Now you may not know I have some contacts over at the FCA. I've got a direct line of communication with their executive casework team. So if I get any, in fact, they asked me specifically if I get any intelligence on bounce back loan lenders acting abhorrently or up to mischief, I have to grass them up. So I've been doing that for a couple of years now. If somebody phones me up, I suggest, you're better off telling the FCA with their permission. I pass them over to the FCA. The FCA investigates. Bob's your uncle. However, as you can see, I did contact them back in 2022 about this. I passed them over a customer who's been ripped off by Tide, and they didn't do anything. This is the FCA. They're like the parent organisation of the Financial Ombudsman Service. This scam is just everybody's looking the other way, not interested. It's fucking outrageous. So with my patience wearing thin and more people coming forward telling me they're being hit with these fees and charges, and I know you're not allowed to charge fees and charges, I lost my patience, so I got in touch with the British Business Bank. I said, look, I've told you this before, but they're not allowed to. Can you just please do something? So they said, Mike, we're going to pass it to legal. We'll get back in touch with you. Fantastic, I thought. Now, what I did in the meantime, I got hold of somebody who just contacted me. I said, look, would you like me to pass you over to the British Business Bank? Send me all your details, blah, blah, blah. Yes, Mike, they said, I'll happily speak to them, but if you want to pass over all the documents I've sent you for verification to make sure he's not a nutter and I'm not making stuff up, you're more than welcome to do that. So that's exactly what I did. So I left it in the capable hands of the British Business Bank, knowing it's going upstairs to legal. Now, that was taking it a time, probably less than 24 hours, but I was fuming. So I then contacted, as you can see on the screen, the Department of Trade, because I was that pissed off at that many people phoning me up with the same problem which nobody's listening or caring about. I thought, you know what, I'm going to ask them for an official comment. So I fired off the email, no reply. So then I picked up the phone, look at the screen, give them a bell and ask for an official comment. Now, they promised me, Mike, somebody will, leave it with us. Now, that day there was an emergency cabinet Cobra meeting or something and blah, blah, blah. Long story short, I get a phone call at 10 o'clock at night, which went something along the lines of, Mike, all them documents you've sent us have been verified. We'd like to say the lender cannot charge any fees. In fact, verbatim, they repeated what Baroness Bowles said earlier and Baroness Penn and what the rules said, word for word. So I said, thank God, at last. Are you going to launch an investigation? Are you going to do something about it? The reply at 10 o'clock from the government was, no, we're not going to do anything. I was fucking fuming. So then, I'm now... Why is nobody taking this seriously? There's vulnerable people being ripped off, threatened with court when there's no chance of court action. What the hell is going on behind the scenes? At the same time, I'd been running sort of a story about the Labour corruption, what was she called? The COVID Corruption Commissioner, Rachel Reeves, is saying, who's going to be going after everybody. I had a news update on the website I'd written. And they got in touch with me and said, Mike, we'd like to chat to you about this, the role of the COVID Corruption Commissioner. And because I was worried that people are going to be thinking, if they've defaulted, Labour get in power, they're going to be chasing them. Well, it's no such thing. They're after the PPE people, etc., the VIP lane scammers. If you genuinely cannot afford to repay your bounce back loan, they're not coming after you. They're not coming after you. You need to be treated with compassion and respect. In fact, I think that's words they used. So, long story short, I've now got a direct contact with the top team for this COVID Corruption Commissioner. So I thought, well, I'm not wasting this opportunity. I said, right, I've got a little job for you. The first job before you've even picked the commissioner. I want some out with this. So I sent them all the documents. And behind the scenes, we hatched a plan to get the government, in black and white, to somebody other than me, to say that fees and charges are not allowed. Not allowed, it's crazy. Anyhow, that'll be in part 2. Also in part 2, I'll be telling you how all the big banks in the UK are forced by this poxy corrupt government to pass over anybody who hasn't been able to get a business loan from, including them government-backed recovery loans and any other harebrained ones they come up with in the future. The big banks have to pass them customers over to fucking Tide. You couldn't make this shit. It just gets worse and worse and worse. So stay tuned for part 2.